Stories of the Incas' incredible wealth reached the Spanish conquistadors, who journeyed to Peru. What they found was even more amazing than their wildest dreams.
What's the Coricancha?
I'm meeting Peter Frost again in Cusco. He says I'll understand more when I see what's left of the Coricancha, the main Inca temple dedicated to worshiping the sun.
This wall was the outer wall of the Temple of the Sun, and it's a marvel of architecture. It's extraordinary fitting of the stone and the curve.
Peter tells me that the Spaniards often built their churches on top of native temples. It was part of their effort to convert the Incas. In this case, even more of the Inca temple was preserved inside the church.
Peter, what would this place have looked like during Incan times?
Well, it would have been dazzling, awe-inspiring, covered in gold. Everywhere you looked, there would have been sheets of gold on the walls. There were certainly golden ornaments and gold decoration, gold wall cladding.
So this whole wall would have been covered in gold?
Very probably, yes.
And there'd be like gold effigies here?
Yeah. It would have been shining, full of light, really impressive.
It was gold's ability to catch the rays of the sun that led the Incas to consider it sacred. They learned to shape the metal into beautiful patterns, but they never considered its monetary value until the arrival of the Spaniards in 1532. The conquistadors were led by an illiterate hustler named Francisco Pizarro. He was obsessed by the dream of El Dorado. Unscrupulous and crafty, he lured the Inca emperor into meeting with him, unarmed. It was a fatal mistake.
So what happened to all the gold?
Well, when the Spanish conquistador Francisco Pizarro entered the Inca Empire, he captured the Inca emperor, and the Inca emperor offered to fill a room full of gold and 2 rooms full of silver in exchange for his freedom.
So Pizarro captures the Incan king and holds him for ransom.
That's right.
Pizarro doubted the ransom could be fulfilled, but he gave Atahualpa 2 months for the gold to reach the line on the wall of his cell. He sent some of his own men to help collect the loot.
Pizarro sends 4 men down to Cusco, where they know there's a huge stash of gold here. They come into the Coricancha, and this is what they see. And with their own bare hands, they strip this extraordinary treasure and send it back to be melted down.
So these 4 Spanish soldiers, they come in here and they're seeing this place is just covered with gold. I'm trying to imagine it. It's just gold everywhere.
There was a garden of gold here with flowers and ears of corn, potatoes, they made of gold and silver, animals too. And they just scooped the whole lot up and took it off.
For weeks, the gold arrived in Atahualpa's cell from all corners of the Inca Empire. But as the pile grew, Pizarro became apprehensive at the thought of letting his captive free. He decided to go back on his word and killed Atahualpa before the ransom was complete. The Spaniards destroyed the cultural treasures of the Incas. They melted the gold into ingots and divided the spoils. But legend has it that some treasure never reached the Spaniards before Atahualpa was killed. It's said that the Incas themselves took it away into the jungle, to the city called Paititi. No wonder the conquistadors kept looking for it. This gives me even more reason to head off into the jungle myself.
Good to see you again. Hi, Justice Paulino.
And I've got a great team. Greg Diarmengian and his partner Paulino Mamani worked together on their first expedition to the pyramids of Paratuari. The letter Greg showed me places Paititi 10 days' travel from Cusco. Drawing on his knowledge of Inca lore, Greg believes that if the city exists, it's most likely northeast of Cusco, beyond the town of Choquicancha. It's a wild, unexplored region, which includes the mysterious pyramids of Paratuari. The Incas in the letter would have traveled by foot to Paititi. 400 years later, it's impossible to duplicate their journey. But Greg says we're probably pretty close.
Well, we're going through the Sacred Valley, and Chuquicancha, which means gold enclosure, is a far outpost of the Incan Empire. It would have been there that people would have gone towards the eastern edges, the northern and eastern edges of the Incan Empire.
So if we were here during Incan times, we'd be passing through the periphery into the uncharted territories.
Yes, exactly.
And this valley that we're in now, would they have traveled through this?
Sure, this is well traveled in Incan times.
Really?
The Sacred Valley.
This valley is called sacred because it's where the Inca royalty lived. And I don't blame them. The scenery is spectacular. The hillsides are still terraced for farming, the way the Incas laid them out. In fact, the landscape seems to have changed very little since the Spanish conquest. Inca descendants still farm and herd goats and llamas, just like their ancestors did 600 years ago. We pass several Inca ruins. There's 30 walls, still impressive. I can't help but wonder about the great civilization that once flourished here, and what it might have accomplished if the Spaniards had never dreamed of El Dorado. It's 100 miles to Chuquicancha, where we'll leave the van behind. This road is so full of switchbacks, it'll take us 3.5 hours to get there. But I just as soon we take our time on roads like this.
You know, one thing I'm wondering about in terms of El Dorado and Paititi is where would all the gold come from? Were there gold in the hills out here?
Yeah, but they had such a large quantity of gold it had to come from elsewhere. And many of the jungle areas provided gold to the Incas.
And is it alluvial gold on the surface, or do you have to actually mine for it?
Both kinds, but most of it would be on the surface.
Really? So we might see some?
We might.
That'd be exciting.
Yeah.
If we find some, can we keep it?
After a few hours, it begins to feel as if we're getting to the edge of civilization. In Inca times, this far eastern part of the empire was called the Antisuyo. It was wild and uncharted, just as it is today. We pull into Chuquicancha in the late afternoon. Looks like they're ready for us. I'm drawn to the stone walls along the edge of the square.
You don't get this kind of fine architecture in these remote areas unless it's indicating something very important.
Greg tells me these walls mark the northeastern boundary of the Incan Empire. Beyond them lay the frontier and the fabled city of Paititi.
So beyond this, it's just a llama ride into the jungle. Right?
We'll take the llamas
Yeah.
far, but the llamas won't go in the jungle themselves.
They won't.
But we will.
Will we ride them? No, they just walk with us. I'm new to llama riding. They're llama trekking. So I guess they carry some of this stuff. Why don't we go over there and show me how it works, okay? Are llamas friendly creatures?
They're kind of skittish.
They're kind of skittish, huh?
Yeah. You have to get to know them.
We got a wild one.
Llamas have been the pack animals of the Andes for millennia. But I find out that they're not very strong. They can only carry about 80 pounds, and even that not for long. So when one gets tired, you move the pack to another.
Hey, jumping llama.